What is going on, everyone? Welcome into Bayou Bengals football. So, two guys I wanted to touch on, Emery Jones and Jordan Jefferson, I think are going to be key for this upcoming game. So, Emery Jones is going to be key. By upcoming game, I mean in the Florida State game. I think Emery Jones is going to be key in this Florida State game because I feel that Emery Jones is probably going to get matched up with Jared Verse, and he's going to need to really hold up. Now, you see Emery Jones struggled with some of the top-end defensive players he went against last year, like Will Anderson, Jalen Carter. But Emery Jones is a guy that, to me, he's a guy who I think is now with a year under his belt, I think is ready for the challenge. And not that he wasn't last year, but I think he's even more prepared for the challenge of going up against a top-end edge rusher. So I think he's really going to embrace the challenge of going against Jared Verse, Lovett, Braden Fisk, some of the top defensive linemen that Florida State has. So keep an eye on Emery Jones, the right tackle, number 50 for LSU in this game. So I think, I think Emery Jones, definitely a talented player. But yeah, I kind of want to reiterate, he does struggle against some of the more dominant defensive linemen. So to me, Jared Verse could be a tough matchup for him. He is a guy who plays strong. He's got a good anchor, good all-around skill set, but struggles a little bit laterally, and he's not like a super fluid mover, not like super flexible, free-moving athlete, and that's what gets him in trouble at times against top defensive linemen. So I think that that could be a problem going against Jared Verse. When he squares someone up and gets in front of him, he's hard to get around. But when he doesn't, it can be a little tough, or he can have trouble staying in front of the defensive lineman. So watch out. So look for Emery Jones in this game. See if he's matched up against Jared Verse. See if he's matched up against Fisk, Lovett. Some of the, he's going to have some tough matchups against some of the talented defensive linemen that Florida State has. So the other guy I want to discuss in this game. So when there's a suspension of a guy like Mason Smith on a team like LSU, it's obviously tough, and it's going to impact this game, and it really could hurt LSU's chances of winning. But it also opens the door, and it's opening the door for a guy named Jordan Jefferson. Jordan Jefferson, if you remember, played his last few seasons, or played the last 4 years or 5 years. Was it 4 or 5 years? He's a redshirt senior now. Played several seasons at West Virginia and had an excellent career there, especially had a really nice year last year. Transfers to LSU this year, defensive tackle for him. Going to play in place, most likely get the start in place of Mason Smith and play next to Mekhi Wingo. Watch for Jordan Jefferson in this game. I went back and watched some of his tape last year at West Virginia, and I watched some of his tape in high school. This is a guy that's a lot more explosive than I thought, and he plays with really good leverage. He is aggressive against the run, maybe even a little too aggressive at times, but keep your eye on Jordan Jefferson, because I think that Florida State, with Mason Smith out, they might, I'm not going to say they're going to get too relaxed, but they may get a little confident that they do not have to worry about the interior of the defensive line for LSU as much. And I think that's really when Jordan Jefferson, Wingo can really rise up, even Lee and Gilroy, some of their, other defensive interior guys. I'm sure that they're hearing that, without Mason Smith, it's going to be a little easier for Florida State. I'm sure, the competitor in Wingo and Jefferson and the LSU interior defensive linemen, I'm sure the competitiveness inside them is really going to want to make them step up and show people what they're capable of. So keep an eye not only on the LSU defensive interior line, but also number 99, Jordan Jefferson, transfer from West Virginia. It's kind of funny. He's got the same name as the former Jordan Jefferson, the former LSU quarterback, not to be mistaken. But yeah, Jordan Jefferson has a chance to really show people what he's capable of, and show people that LSU really knows what they're doing as far as scouting, and that they have brought in a really talented transfer who not only is a guy who's going to, be tremendous to have as a backup who will get a lot of snaps even when Mason Smith comes back, but a guy that you can count on to be a high-end player who can step up for you when needed in a position like this where you need him to. So keep an eye on the LSU defensive interior line, not just for the Florida State game, but for the entire season. And we'll see how, we've talked a ton about the transfers on the defensive line. Keep an eye on how Paris Shan, Jordan Jefferson, Jalen Lee. Keep an eye on how these transfers, how they add depth, and how when they do get snaps, how do they make the most of it? Are they being disruptive? So keep an eye on all these guys this year. It'll be fun to see how the LSU defensive line really comes together. A lot of, new faces, young guys, unproven recruits like guys like Quincy Wiggins, Savion Jones. Keep an eye on how this unit gels, number one, and how the what the rotation is, and who does. That's the thing. I'm saying Jordan Jefferson is going to have the most likely get that start for Mason Smith, but keep an eye on number one, is it Jordan Jefferson, and then if Jefferson's in there and Wingo are in there, how do they rotate in Gilroy and Lee? So obviously could be Gilroy, but keep an eye on who starts and when we see Gilroy, Lee, and when they're rotating guys in. But yeah, I think Emery Jones, Jordan Jefferson, two key guys certainly to watch. It'll be interesting. There's a lot of different takes you could have for this upcoming matchup for Florida State. I think, to me, the LSU wide receivers versus the Florida State corners, I think, will be a fascinating matchup. Now, to be honest, I haven't really scouted Florida State's corners too deeply. They always do have a pretty solid defensive core of defensive backs, but to me, like if their defensive line really comes to play and wins has the edge over LSU's defensive line, has the edge, over LSU's offensive line, I think the LSU or the Florida State secondary shouldn't have to worry too much. I think if they do control the line, if they do win the line of scrimmage with their defensive linemen, I think that Malik Neighbors or Aaron Anderson probably will have a couple big play catches, but I think with the less time Daniels will have to throw, I don't think that there's a threat of some big plays vertically down the field. Just because that's not really, none of the LSU receivers necessarily, that's not really the big strength of a lot of the LSU receivers. Now, maybe Aaron Anderson is that guy, but Aaron Anderson, the guy that I think is going to really excel in the slot. So if he does come up with a big play, it's going to be because he's winning vertically more towards the middle of the field, and it's more so likely be a little bit more on the safeties, linebackers a little. So keep an eye on the Florida State defensive backs versus the LSU wide receivers. I think Aaron Anderson has a chance to really make an impact for LSU. To me, you're hearing reports about Aaron Anderson's a name that keeps getting thrown out about for LSU, a guy it's really impressing LSU players and coaches. But the question is, do we see, first of all, does Aaron Anderson get an opportunity week one against Florida State? And if so, does he really showcase that skill set, and do we see it consistently throughout the course of a season? Like I look at, to me, Aaron Anderson reminds me a little bit of Zachariah Branch, the USC receiver who had a really big game last night against San Jose State. I see similarities there. Both guys really good speed, excellent return men, guys who tend to have, big games, with their skill set will tend to have a big game. They'll have a couple big games in a season. And why I say maybe just one or two, because they are, once a guy is known as a dangerous return man, you see teams will really start to prepare for that. So to me, since it's week one, I think this is a chance. Aaron Anderson, has it. Number one, I think has probably his best chance to make an impact as a returner. If he is the return man for LSU, I would assume so. And if he does he continue to be that guy, be a dangerous returner throughout the course of his season? And how many snaps do they work him in the slot? Do they try to get him and Malik Neighbors out on the field at the same time? I think you have to. I think even though Neighbors, Neighbors, I think will excel more in the slot. I think he is a guy that you really want to get on the outside, play on the outside, and play with Aaron Anderson as well. So watch Aaron Anderson in this game. Aaron Anderson, if you remember, was a transfer wide receiver from Alabama. This is his first year at LSU. So, when you get a transfer wide receiver from Alabama, usually your thoughts start spurring in your head because you think of Jamison Williams. Like Jamison Williams transferred. Well, I guess that was the opposite. He transferred from Ohio State to Alabama. But when you think of I guess to make a different point, I guess when you think of transfer from Alabama, you would assume a guy that was a big-time recruit and heavily sought after, and that certainly is the case for Aaron Anderson. He just needs the opportunity. The opportunity just was not there for him this year. I think with that being said, I think that kind of really backs up my point of, do they give Aaron Anderson the opportunity early? I talked about Mike Denbrock made the point with Aaron Anderson, this guy that you need to touch the ball, get the ball in his hands where he's looking forward and he can make plays after the catch. This is where he's going to excel. Ball in his hands quickly and turned upfield, looking to make someone miss and get as many yards as possible. That's Aaron Anderson's game. And if he is in the game, look for a screen, look for a slant, something that can get him the ball in his hands where he can immediately turn upfield with space and make the most of that run after the catch opportunity. So, I just wanted to touch on that with Aaron Anderson. But I think we'll stick with talking the defensive line in this matchup versus Florida State. So Savion Jones and Quincy Wiggins, two guys that come to mind for this matchup. Quincy Wiggins, Savion Jones, two pretty big-time recruits for LSU, as most LSU players are, especially the defensive line. Savion Jones, a guy with the skill set that really could help LSU win this game. Now, I think Savion Jones is one of those guys who, if Mason Smith was playing in this game, I think he would be there would be a higher chance of him creating a big-time play. And why I say that is Savion Jones certainly does have the ability to win one-on-one, but he is not, or at least has not shown the ability to be dominant enough where if he is, double-teamed or chipped, he is, in that case, would be a little bit more neutralized. But Savion Jones, to me, has a chance to have a really nice game. I could see him having a really nice game in this game and being fairly impactful. Same with Quincy Wiggins. Quincy Wiggins, a guy that's probably not high on Florida State's radar. No offense to him, but he's just a guy who needs some of the opportunity. Has a skill set. If you look at his high school tape, is all there. Has a body where he really looks the part. Lean, strong, muscular build. Guys were throwing out his name as guys to watch. Actually, I think it was Savion Jones that talked about Quincy Wiggins as one of the guys to watch this year for LSU. So Savion Jones, Quincy Wiggins, two more guys to watch in this matchup versus Florida State. And I think that, I think Savion Jones would be a lot more dangerous with Mason Smith out there, just because Savion Jones is one of those guys where he's the perfect edge rusher for if a quarterback's trying to extend the play, Savion Jones can quickly get off that block and get to the quarterback if the quarterback's scrambling. I think that's what Savion Jones's game really is. That's one of the strong suits of his game. Closing in on the quarterback when the quarterback's going to try to scramble. I think, he still has. I don't think he's not draft eligible this year, is he? What year is Savion Jones? But I think that's what Savion Jones will make him will make him a lot more appealing to NFL teams is that ability. I don't think he's going to be I don't think Savion Jones will be a first round pick, but I think he'll be a guy that goes, maybe late second, third round. I know this is kind of early to project this, but I think that's why the NFL will like him, just that ability to get off of blocks and close in on athletic quarterbacks who can scramble. So, Savion Jones, certainly a guy down the road with an NFL future. But not just that. This is has the opportunity to take a big leap of improvement this season. So, it appears, the two LSU players, as we know, are going to be out, are Mason Smith. Mason Smith is suspended for this entire Florida State game due to improper. Exactly, I'll be honest, I don't really care enough to read into it fully. I know that's what that's what I'm supposed to do with this show, but I don't. When I heard it happened over 2 years ago, that's to me when I've kind of just ignore that, because I think I don't agree with it. But Mason Smith out for the suspension, out for this Florida State game, and then they're going to be without cornerback J.K. Johnson, transfer from Ohio State. So those are the two guys that are out for LSU: Mason Smith and J.K. Johnson. But you hope for LSU, not just in this game, but throughout the course of the season, that they're going to be improved special teams wise. You just hope they clean up the miscues. Even if they still have some miscues special teams this year, can they clean up at least half of them this year? I think that's going to be key for LSU to have success this year. Can they just clean up most of the mistakes? You're always going to have mistakes. Quarterback throws interception, defense gives up a big play, defense has a penalty, pass interference, face mask. You're always going to make those mistakes, but can LSU clean up some of the muff punts, and Georgia returning a field goal for a missed field goal for a touchdown? Like last year in the Florida State game, 2 muff punts. Can they clean up some of those mistakes, and not just the mistakes, but mistakes in big moments, big games? I think that's what really stood out for the miscues LSU had on special teams. They were in big moments, in big games, late in games. So those are some things you got to clean up. LSU should be strong in special teams. Their punter, pretty good player. So, LSU, hopefully special teams is improved. Hopefully it's just something I think Brian Kelly talked about this. Hopefully it's just something that is very crisp this year. It's just smooth, even if there's a couple minor mistakes, or they have a couple bad punts, or maybe they'll miss a few field goals. Those are always things that you're going to – minor mistakes are always a given, I would say, with special teams. But I think with really good practice, excellent preparation, and really good coaching on special teams, you'll clean up some of the major flaws. But, they will have a couple missed field goals that they should make. They should have a couple – bad punts that go out of bounds or are short. Those things are always every team has those. But the major mistakes on special teams, those are things that they really want to try to avoid this season and really do the best to do so. But as far as the coaching, so the two coaches, Mike Norvell for Florida State, Brian Kelly for LSU. Brian Kelly, the clear advantage in the coaching department, just coached a lot longer, coached multiple teams, coached in a lot more big-time games. But Mike Norvell, kind of the young, energetic, more so innovative guy, kind of guy that seems like players really rally around. To me, I like Mike Norvell's pretty level-headed guy. Seems like a guy that's always, moving the ball forward, always looking to improve. Seems like he's a guy that's definitely worthy of respect. So, and not that Brian Kelly also is too, guy that's always looking to move forward, but a guy that's, I'd say is pretty level-headed for the most part. A guy that certainly. A guy that's certainly fiery, gets after it. So I think LSU, Brian Kelly certainly has the coaching edge in this game. I think that, the way Brian Kelly handled the Mason Smith, or the way he tried to schedule a week 0 game, I'll be honest. I think it's smart. I think it was smart. As Florida State, there's always going to be two sides to this. I think Florida State fans would say it's I don't know if you'd say it's cowardly, but it's just kind of they'd say maybe it's not fair. But to me, I think that Brian Kelly understood that this is not something that this was something that the NCAA should not have suspended him for. So to me, if it's something that's kind of a really weak thing to be suspended for, maybe just do the best you can to avoid it affecting them in a big game. I think that was really Brian Kelly's thinking there. But yeah, I think that we'll keep talking about Mason Smith. So to me, what annoys me about this is the NFL in pro sports is about stars. It's about big time stars playing. You see the NFL doing everything they can to have quarterbacks and big time stars play. So to me, if you're the television networks, I think college football can get away with this because as diehard LSU fans and diehard Florida State fans, they're going to watch this game regardless. So I think all the LSU fans that were going to watch this game are still going to watch it without Mason Smith. But I think there is some of those extra viewers that would be tuning into this game. I know it's not later in the season, because like last year, if it's later in the season, people are tuning in to watch Georgia play. If you have a top 5 pick to potentially see if you're going to watch Jalen Carter. Mason Smith, the top 5 to 10 NFL draft pick hype isn't there as of yet, but it is there somewhat. It's there somewhat, I mean, there is a little bit of that buzz. So to me, if you're a big time NFL fan and you're a fan of, I don't know, a team that's going to be really bad this year, maybe like the Buccaneers, maybe, or the Texans could be bad again, maybe they're tuning in to watch, maybe they would be tuning in to watch Mason Smith, and you're potentially missing out on some extra viewers. Now, maybe it's not a ton of extra viewers, but, to me, the NCAA suspending Mason Smith, why it's just, if you're looking at it through, we want stars on the field, two traditional powerhouse programs, an NFL caliber guy, potential top 5, top 10 pick. Why would you not want him on the field? So I think, the NCAA doing a disservice just to the television networks and a lot of the viewers and some of the, potential extra viewers who would be tuning into this game. Now, I know a lot of people, if you're not I say a lot of people outside of even LSU's fan base and like the SEC probably don't really know Mason Smith as of yet. But to me, this is a game where if he went out and had a game-changing, difference-maker type game, and you see his highlights being played on SportsCenter repeatedly, and people are saying, who's that guy? If you're an NFL fan, you're like, who's that guy? Is he draft eligible? The questions start spurring. And then, maybe more people tune into LSU's game to watch Mason Smith. So to me, this suspension could not only affect some of I would say a little bit of the extra viewers you could get, but it could start affecting, some viewers, down the road, because say Mason Smith comes back for the Grambling game and tears it up, that's not going to draw, people aren't going to tune into the highlights of that as much as the Florida State game. The Florida State game, if that's a good one, that's going to be replayed, a lot, and that's going to be a very talked about game. To me, come NFL draft season, these are the type of games that if you're a draft eligible guy, if you have a big game in this game, you're showed over, highlights of this game are showed over and over, and that's the must cut up tape on YouTube. So, yeah, I think the NCAA, doing a little bit of disservice to the television networks and LSU fans and people who are NFL and NFL draft geeks who were excited to see Mason Smith in a key matchup against a Power 5 opponent in Florida State, a name brand and a really good top 10 team. So I think it's disappointing from that point of view. But yeah, I'll talk, so I don't know Florida State as well as LSU. I know now that I've covered LSU for almost 2 months now, I know, the 2 deep, 3 deep, almost the whole entire team LSU. But, from watching Florida State last year and, looking at some of the transfers they have, Braden Fisk at D-tackle is a really talented guy. I think he has the chance to be he has the chance to really have a breakout year. And, this LSU game, this could be his coming out party for him. He could do kind of like what I talked about with Mason Smith. He could do that for Florida State. He could have a really dominant game because he's a guy that just really, he plays fast and he's just super highly competitive. And he is disruptive. Not really the biggest, most physical presence out there, but he just, it seems like he's just hard for people to stay in front of this guy. So Braden Fisk, defensive tackle, former transfer from Western Michigan. Keep an eye on that guy in this game. And then Fabian Lovett, a guy that was injured most of last year. He has an opportunity to really shine in this game. So I think that, as much buzz as LSU's defensive line was getting talked about, mostly for the Mason Smith suspension, the Florida State defensive line has an opportunity to really excel in this game. And, that was one thing I kind of, Florida State fans disagreed with me on my other channel when I talked Florida State. I didn't think they had as many true difference makers on defense other than Jared Verse, but there's a couple, Lovett, I'd say definitely Verse is one, but Lovett and Fisk are the 2 maybes. They're definitely 2 maybes, meaning that they could be difference makers. And if they are, and if the answer to that is yes, then that's when LSU runs into trouble in this game, because now you have 3 difference makers on the defensive line against a really good LSU offensive line. But as good as it doesn't really matter how good your offensive line is. If you're going against a team with 3 difference makers on the defensive line, one of them a freak edge rusher, top 5 pick, that can create a lot of problems. And you saw that last year when Florida State didn't have Fisk, but you saw with Jared Verse how disruptive Jared Verse was in that football game. So keep an eye on the Florida State defensive line. Florida State linebackers, Deloach is a nice player. Florida State linebackers aren't going to wow you. They kind of remind me of, they're similar to the 2013 national title team linebackers. Terrence Smith, well, I guess Telvin Smith had a little higher upside, but they're similar in that sense. They're both really good college players. Deloach, I forget the other guy's name, but yeah, Deloach is a good player. I think he's one of those glue guys you need on your team that's going to, just be solid, a solid tackler, good overall player. But I don't think he's going to be, I don't think LSU, Mike Denbrock, their OC, is staying up at night worried about Deloach. And I don't mean that in any disrespect. I just mean that he's not going to be, flying all over the field, creating havoc. I think he'll be a guy that could rack up some tackles in this game, but I don't expect him to just be utterly dominant. And then, Florida State secondary looks pretty solid. Florida State offensive line, they did a good job of getting a couple guys in the portal. I don't think their offensive line is going to be exceptional just because it hasn't been in a long time. Now, obviously, I know that sounds hypocritical of me because I say each year is a new year, but I don't expect Florida State's offensive line, I think, going from, pretty solid last year, I don't expect it to go to, like, very good to elite this year. I think it could be good. But to say it's going to be elite is, I feel like that is a far cry. But yeah, for Florida State, the receiving core is going to be strong. Keon Coleman, talented guy. Jaheim Bell, how they get these guys the ball will be really interesting to watch. So that's a matchup that'll be interesting. Trey Benson versus the LSU defense, I think, will be interesting. Him running the inside where they have Omar Spates. Omar Spates, another guy that needs to have a big game. Hopefully he gives them a lot of tackles. But out of time, guys. Going to wrap with that. Thanks for tuning in to Bayou Bengals. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.